Hey gang, what is going on? We are back once again with another installment of the Squared Roundtable, the show where we break down one specific topic about the squared circle inside of the WWE. And this time, I guess we're talking about people's face, something that is on that face. Not what you're thinking, but if you look up above, the topic is about blood. Now guys, blood has historically been a big part of wrestling. We know that is no longer the case, so the question is, should blood be allowed in the WWE? For that, we should probably go back a little bit, and I want to ask you first, Ryan. When you first got into wrestling, how big a role was blood in the matches?
Well, it was definitely I felt like it was important in feuds that really, took a turn to get like a real heated feud where it's like it came down to either like a Hell in a Cell match, 3 stages of hell, even cage matches at that point. You felt, you kind of got accustomed to it. It was something that was expected. I started watching wrestling like right around the year 2000. So that was just a pretty natural thing to see in any match that was considered like hardcore. There was a lot of just regular hardcore matches where you didn't see blood, but pay-per-views with weapons and things like that, you expected to see blood. And it was really there to just kind of intensify a match, make it seem even more intense than it otherwise would without blood.
Yeah, exactly. When I started watching wrestling in the Attitude Era, it was definitely more prominent. I mean, it's really hard to have this conversation and not talk about hardcore wrestling in there as well, and like the hardcore championship. So with that being around, it's definitely blood was more prominent. But in those big matches, in those big pay-per-view matches, it definitely made them feel more special. Like, oh, these guys are beating each other to a pulp. So I think it was effective when especially in the Attitude Era, but there became a time where it was everywhere, and that got to be a little too much.
Obviously, I grew up watching WCW for the most part, as I've stated previously. So in the Attitude Era, WCW was never really known for having a lot of blood. You would have guys, like old school guys, maybe a Ric Flair at some point or something, but it was never really a prominent thing. So when I did get any chance to maybe see an old VHS tape about WWF, I would see the blood, and my first reaction was like, whoa, what is this? Are they really beating the crap out of each other? And I think at first I wasn't necessarily in support of it, but it definitely caught me off guard, which goes to show, I mean, if they wanted to be edgy, hey, I thought part of that blood was real with the chair shots and everything. And now that I brought up the chair shots, I do have to ask you guys something. Historically, I think a lot of people associated the blood with the chair shots to the head, because the idea is that the guy got busted
hit him in
open.
the head. Gonna bleed.
Exactly. The Crimson Mask, only one thing can happen. Do you see blood nowadays, 2015, 2016, in the same way we would maybe see a chair shot when you go back into the network and see all these old matches?
Absolutely. Like, I think what you're trying to say is that you're not as accustomed to it now, so it, like, seeing
maybe
the blood, it affects you more.
Yeah,
exactly. It's a little bit a harder pill to swallow to watch people, like, bleeding, especially if you look at, like, Eddie Guerrero versus JBL at Judgment Day.
Oh,
where,
yes.
like, Eddie was just pouring blood. Yeah, absolutely. Like, chair shots to the head, you're always, like, wincing now because of what we know now. And, I mean, blood, not as much, but definitely, we were so used to seeing blood in the late 90s and the early 2000s that, just like anything else, like, you become numb to it. But
Exactly.
now, since we rarely see blood nowadays, only if it's, like, for someone gets for real busted open is the only time we see blood now. So, yeah, I mean, we're definitely not as accustomed to it. But I don't think I don't think blood in wrestling should be as forbidden as it is as chair shots to the head, which I completely agree should not be in wrestling anymore.
Agreed. Yeah, no, to your point, one, I think chair shots to the head are, I don't like going back and watching those matches that have a lot of them. I do not like going back and seeing them, knowing what I know now. Like, oh my God, just
yeah,
the
you can't
poor
watch
damage
Mick Foley,
to this man.
like handcuffed.
Yeah,
No,
you don't want to see
and just get
the Rock,
destroyed.
Yeah.
No.
So yeah, I got to go more in that same light. I think chair shots to the head is way more extreme because we know the repercussions that implies with blood. I mean, who gets busted open with a paper cut? That can be devastating for some people, but it's not like a concussion or something happening. So the magnitude there is very different. But it was around 2008 that this whole shift happened. Apparently, I did some research. It had more to do with the match that Jericho and Shawn Michaels had, where the blood went a little overboard on HBK's end. They put that match to a stop. That was apparently the reasoning why. Shawn Michaels was interviewed about that. So we do know that there was a point in time where anytime there was blood in a match, they would stop it. I remember Christian had a match, and like it
they
just
stopped the middle of
started.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like an ECW championship match, so it makes it worse. Like ECW associated with Extreme. No, we got to wipe the guy off and all that. How big a contrast or impact did that have on you when maybe at first you didn't like blood, but there was a point where it was so normal, and now they're stopping a match because it's happening?
Yeah, that's insane how it was just like one day blood's okay, and the next it's just like we are done. We are stopping a match if it happens. I think that was way too extreme of a change. Mm-hmm. They didn't, pun, whatever. Like they didn't really even like wean us off of it and be like, okay, we're just going to use blood less, and if it happens, it happens. I think that was just around the time where WWE, the PG transition was going on, and they, like, even I think Triple H said at one point, they kind of went to a G rating at one point, and they realized that, and they've started to loosen up since then. So, nowadays you see blood, and, the ref will try and clean it up if it gets really bad, but for the most part, they just let things continue.
Mm-hmm. It was definitely a hard switch, like you said, Ryan. It's basically all to literally nothing, and if it happens, then we need to stop everything, take care of it. But the fact that that happened, and that there isn't a lot of blood left in wrestling, not many people bleed anymore, really makes it more impactful when somebody does it. Because you're not expecting it, and you're like, oh my god, it's blood, like what's happening here? And I think, it adds to more impact in a match these days.
Yeah, and for those watching, keep in mind, we are talking about WWE. We know there are a ton of companies that use a little bit too much blood for my liking. And no, there is a limit for me. Okay, so we've had a chance to talk about maybe why it happened. I guess the next thing is, blood really has contributed in a couple of key moments in wrestling history. And Stone Cold in his podcast will say almost every week, a little color adds a lot to the match. But he is the best example. If it was not for the situation where he was in the sharpshooter and the blood wasn't pouring down, that would have been a completely different thing. I remember, I forget which game it was, that it was a WWE story mode where by default the blood was turned off. So I saw that same cutscene with the blood off, and I was like, nope, that is just not.
Might have been the WrestleMania moments in 2K14, probably. Yeah,
that was it. So what about that face, Keith? What's on your mind right now?
I'm just thinking, like, would it really detract from it? Like, you would still have the shot of like Stone Cold in pain and agony. Like, yes, blood added to it, I guess, but I think it still would have been a very impactful moment if there was no blood.
It would have been impactful.
I think it would always be impactful, but that imagery, him just in pain, the blood just pouring and pouring down his face, and then he just passes out. He never taps out. I think the blood really did add a lot to that, because it was like, it was just a combination of like you're cheering him on, and you're also you're a little bit uncomfortable with the amount of blood. So you really sympathize with him, because you're like, how is this guy still going? Like, he should be just out cold right now.
Fair enough.
Were you guys fan of first blood matches? Taking it to you first, Keith?
Yeah, I thought they were cool back in the day. I mean, especially being in the Attitude Era, me being a kid, like, yeah, Stone Cold and Kane, they're going to beat each other to a pulp. And I thought they were cool. When done right, I guess.
That is a match that, obviously the only one I can think of, and I don't even think I've actually seen that match, is the Stone Cold Kane one, because you know the story of, how can Kane bleed if he has a mask and all that, because I mean that match happened before I really got into wrestling. I can't say they're very memorable because I actually cannot think of a single First Blood match. I know I've seen them, but I cannot remember a single one that I've seen.
I like how they have to bring out creative finishes for a First Blood match because they just don't end. It's either the ref's knocked out and then heel bleeds, but then the face bleeds before the ref gets up, and then the ref sees the face first, the face of the face, I guess, and then like makes him lose and stuff like that. They usually have very creative finishes.
No, and I read and heard in so many podcasts that they were one of the worst matches to do because you could accidentally bust somebody open, and it happened in a couple of times, and they try to play off, oh, he's trying to cover up. No, it's like, it's because the match isn't supposed to end yet. Yeah. So that type of thing. Getting back to 2015, 2016, it's very rare that we get to see blood. If anything, it's almost exclusive to Brock Lesnar, who has, I don't know what kind of contract he has going on, but if he's in a match, you're going to see some blood. So is that the type of situation where it's so rare, and when you have like the Beast, this part-timer go in, do you like that it's that exclusive?
Absolutely, because it really plays the Brock Lesnar's character. He's the Beast. He's this big savage guy that's just going to come beat the hell out of you. And that's where the bleeding in the WWE lives. You know that you're going to see like a brawl, a beatdown whenever you see Brock Lesnar.
I think Lesnar is I think he does it on purpose in the way that, of course, the guy, he fights hard and he also knows how to bust himself open. And I think he doesn't care. He's got the money to pay the fines.
He can get away with it.
And if he wants to add it to the match, he's going to add it to the match. And what I kind of wanted to, I wanted to ask you guys something. I'm going to steal Juan's role for a second here and just say, okay, it's 2015. We're heading into 2016 as of this recording. What would be your blood policy in WWE today? Do you think that they should allow busting open, blading in special occasions? Should they stick with the way they are? Like, what would you do if you were Vince McMahon today?
It's a tough call because you can't help but think about, it's a publicly traded company, appeals to kids. But blood does have a point in time for that, especially when somebody's bleeding recently. They can cut to the shot of a kid in the crowd, and it adds so much because even that kid has maybe never seen blood in a wrestling match. So my policy would be like at a WrestleMania or like, this is the end of the feud. Concrete, like this is not going to keep happening. Have it go all the way out. I would never have it happen on a Raw, on a SmackDown, but maybe like on a Survivor Series. Or if somebody's going to be taken out for a long time, they got busted open, they get injured. On that extreme level, I'm okay with it.
Yep, I agree with you completely, Juan. Save it and make it something special. Stone Cold said that a little bit of a color can go a long way in a match. But almost as a counterpoint to that, if you keep blood special, then it can go a very long way in like a big match. It can just add so much more to that big match. Like think about the main event of WrestleMania 31 when Brock Lesnar got busted open by Roman Reigns. Like it changed the pace and the tone of that match completely. Just by that one little thing.
Both guys were bleeding in that match, and I think it really did add to it. You actually were like, damn, this is a real fight going on. Yeah, it felt more real. So I agree with you guys. If they save it for special occasions, I really don't think there's anything wrong with that at all.
And I think the reason blood can be a welcoming thing is we've talked about this multiple times where we're getting to a point that guys are getting injured because they're doing so many moves. Blood is something that can tell a story, and they can just be standing there. Like Ric Flair, think of the blonde hair. When he was covered in blood, all he had to do was just make a face, like a painful face, but you could just feel the intensity, Dusty Rhodes. But then you could have extreme examples, like in TNA. This is constantly made fun of when Abyss damn near killed RVD, and there was so much blood. It got to a point where it was hilarious. People saw that, and you were supposed to be panicking, but instead it was pure laughter.
Go watch Survivor Series 2003, Vince McMahon versus The Undertaker. That is an example of too much blood. Like Vince bled so hard that there were clots coming off of his face. It's nuts.
That was a little too much. So I guess one of my final questions was, is there too much blood? I think between Ryan, your example with Eddie, Vince, Janice with TNA, a little too much is never good. So the closing question, guys, should blood be allowed in the WWE in at least this rare, unique form?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as long as, everybody does the proper testing to make sure people's, we don't want any like hepatitis situations.
That's a very good point. That's a very good
happened
point.
with like Undertaker. And Cowboy Bob Orton, I guess, has whatever. So as long as, if you go into a match knowing, everyone should be blood tested anyway in WWE because blood could just happen at any moment.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as bleeding on purpose, save it for the WrestleManias, the SummerSlams, main event, Hell in a Cell type matches. Other than that, keep it completely out. We don't need to be desensitized with so much blood. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Ryan completely.
Yeah, I think blood does have a place in wrestling. Maybe not as much as it used to, but wrestling over time, and I think TV and everything as a whole has gotten way more neutral. I guess there are some things way back in the day that we would see that could never happen now on TV, let alone wrestling. So, for those watching, let us know, what do you think about that, Ryan? I think you were about to say something. What was it?
It was, we were like, if you're worried about the kids, we all saw the blood when we were kids.
Think of the children.
Hey, look, we're fine,
Yeah, we are born
we're
in
all
it.
hardworking, good Samaritans. Like, we turned out fine. A little blood isn't going to traumatize your kid. They'll get over it.
It's not like at some point we tried to skip work. It's like, oh my God, look at this. I just walked by the door and I bladed. No, we never went to that extreme.
We'll turn out
we
fine.
Didn't, right? Keith?
Yes,
You're laughing there, but you didn't do that, right?
Not that I
you
will
seem
admit.
like you could do that.
Not that I will
Keith
admit on
bladed
camera.
to get out of work one day.
I will neither confirm nor deny these allegations, sir. I believe it is best you currently move on.
Yeah, so for those watching, let us know if you think blood should be allowed in the WWE. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe, as we have the podcast where we talk about Raw, the pay-per-views, all of that which is happening. We have Fight Night, which is our fantasy wrestling league, and a ton of other discussion videos that happen throughout the week. So until next time, thank you for watching. Leave suggestions for future topics down below, and we will continue with a ton more content right here on Byte.